Welcome to the new live stream segment, Talk Story to Me, where we invite guest authors on to talk about their books, their writing process, publication process, anything you guys want to know. So for our very first episode, we're going to be having Ashleigh Harvey, or AC Harvey, co-author of the YA fantasy The Immortal Game. For the most part, until I can grow this bigger, all the authors are also kind of my friends. Most of them I met through, we were all published through the same imprint. So if it seems like there's a pattern going on, it's definitely your imagination. No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. Don't worry about it. But yeah. Okay, okay. Oh, okay. It's happening. It's happening.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, okay. I got you up. Hello.
Hi.
So everyone, this is author Ashleigh Harvey, co-author of The Immortal Game. She was kind enough to join us today. So remember, absolutely ask questions. Just keep it respectful. As always. I know I don't have to worry about that with you guys, but yeah. So Ashleigh, would you like to give a short introduction before we go ahead and get started?
Yes, definitely. First of all, thank you so much for this. This is so fun and I love it and I'm excited. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining.
Okay, so I am Ashleigh Harvey. I am actually a physics teacher. Surprises some people. Creative writing, physics. They work, let me tell you. So I teach high school physics. It's not as painful as it sounds most days. And I love writing so much. If I could write full time and make a career out of it, I would. Working on it, but it's very not easy to do. So yeah. But yeah, The Immortal Game is the first book that I have published, but I have written many more and hope one day to have them published as well. And I don't know. I'm a fun person. I'm a huge nerd, and I have way too many hobbies. I don't know.
Oh, I feel all of this. I feel all of this deeply, especially the trying to be a full-time writer. Somehow still have to have a day job though. Sad. Oh, so I don't think I knew you were a physics teacher specifically. Like I knew you were a teacher, but can I this is a really weird question to start on, but like how does physics like ever tie into like the things you're interested in writing at all, or is that just like a separate hobby? Like does it ever like intersect?
A little bit. I'm actually kind of. I mean, like I like creating magic systems that are based in somewhat of like science. Like they have logical patterns to them. Um, and I don't know, things that kind of make sense in the scientific perspective. I don't know. The biggest thing that I think it affects is generally when I'm like writing or even like editing other people's stuff. You may have noticed this. I think I might have mentioned it a few times at some point, but I'll sometimes get hung up on the little things that are just like really dumb little, oh, that technically would be a little bit different because here's the difference. And
Oh.
it might bug people, but I can't help it.
No, I love that. The more thorough and like real feeling, the better, I think. I think writing that feels more grounded in reality, even when it comes to like magic, like I feel like it just always has a deeper layer of like realism. Like it always just feels more believable.
Yeah, I hope so. I try to do that. So,
Oh, well, good. Well, good. All right. So I do have a few questions that I'm gonna ask. And if anyone in chat has questions, like while we're talking, uh, I think this is probably gonna be a very like smooth like process. Like we're not going to just like talk the two of us and then do Q&A at the end. If you do have a question that's related to like what we're currently talking about, absolutely feel free to ask, and I'll try to bring it up. Unless it's a bad question, and then I'll just ban you. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Probably. All right. So let's talk about the Immortal games specifically. Um, if anyone in chat would like a summary, you can either do command exclamation book, or if you want to see the full summary, because there was a word limit, you can do command exclamation book by to open up the Amazon page, and you can see the full description. So I guess what is your favorite part or aspect of the Immortal game? Like, especially in terms of like what made you excited to write this book initially, and then what kind of like kept you coming back to it?
Um, this is a fun question to answer always because so me and my co-author Talia, we were like childhood best friends, and we actually started writing this in seventh grade at a sleepover. Because we were obsessed with Percy Jackson and we wanted to write a book about Greek mythology. Um, so definitely my favorite part about it is just the Greek mythology, and I did so much research into Greek mythology and like Greek culture and that area of the world, and it was just so fun to be in there. But then also while we, were coming up with like our world and writing our story and everything, went through so many rewrites. We put our own magical, fantastical twist on Greek mythology. So we came up with our own myths and legend. We added our own creatures and magical monsters, our own gods and goddesses, our own rules and laws. And so it was just like a really fun world to be in.
Oh, it sounds like it. Did you ever Oh God, I love books about Greek mythology so much. Did you ever feel like pressure to stay like close to canon? Like you mentioned making up your own monsters. Like, did you ever worry about like diehard fans of like Greek mythos being like, well, actually, this didn't happen, this didn't exist? Like, how did you kind of handle that?
Um, I don't remember ever like being worried about people complaining about the fantastical things we added, because I guess in my mind it's like we're writing a fantasy, we can kind of play with it however we want. But we did want to stay true to like the hardcore aspects of it, like Mount Olympus, the 12 Olympians, their relationships, their powers, um, and then just kind of like take it from there and make it a little bit more personalized and unique.
Oh, well, nice. I guess part of this goes into my next question. What was it like writing a book with someone else? Like, I've only ever written alone. Like, what was that process kind of like? And what made you guys decide to write a book together?
So for us, we actually started writing at all together. Like the first experience I had writing was with her. We had notebooks that we would write chapters in and pass back and forth. So I'd write a chapter from my perspective and then pass it to her. She'd read it and then write next chapter from her perspective. And so that's how we wrote the first draft of this book. It was really messy and not consistent at all, but it was really fun. And we actually, at one point in time, we had 10 stories going at one time, all
Holy
in different
crap.
genres.
How did you keep them straight?
It's kind of tricky. Some of them we only wrote like a couple of chapters in. Most of them we did not finish. I think we only finished 2 of them actually. But it was fun. We were kids. It's what our hobby was. So yeah. So when we decided to get serious about writing, our process was a little bit more structured. We had our characters, and I would write from my character's perspective. She would write from her character's perspective because we wanted to keep the voices consistent and unique. And I would write, and then she would write, and we plotted together, and we came up with the world and everything together. And then we just like wrote kind of opposite each other, and then we edited each other's, and then we re-edited, and then we like edited again. So we had like this kind of map of like write and then edit and then edit and then edit and then move on. So oh, it worked. The funnest part about writing with a co-author was definitely the plotting, because you have this person to brainstorm with about everything, and you're just like bouncing ideas back and forth, and it just our minds were pretty in sync. So I don't know, it just like worked, and it was really fun and enjoyable.
That sounds like so much fun, and especially like when you're doing it with, I think you mentioned Talia was one of your best friends like since childhood. That must be so fun to be able to like have this thing like the two of you do that I it just sounds very fun. Sorry. I kind of
Yeah,
like
no, it was. And like honestly, like I love her so much for all of the reasons, but like I think the fact that we wrote together and we kept writing together is the reason why we stayed friends and we're still really good friends. Like I moved across the country and we went to different schools and our lives were very different, but this one thing has kept us, you know, really close the whole time that we've known each other. So
that's so cool. So like do you guys plan on writing another book together, or do you think you're going to move forward like just writing independently from now on?
okay, so this was published in 2021. Yes. And we wanted to kind of take a break after that and work on our own stuff. So since then, we've been working separately, but actually, like a month ago, we were like, hey, do you want to like try writing together again? And we came up with this idea and we're like crazy excited about it now. So yeah, we're going to try it again.
Oh, that's so awesome. So this is maybe getting a little more into the business side. But do you think you would try and go through the same imprint that you published your first book through? Or would you try to would you shop it around, like go around to different editors and publishing houses?
So I think for a book that we wrote together, we'd probably first go back there and say, hey, look, we wrote another book together. You seemed to like our first one. Why don't you give this one a try? And then if that doesn't work out, shop it around to other people. I think each of us separately for our own stuff, we're still trying to find new representation, like agent wise. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But we do seem to have like a good relationship with the editor at Spoon Reads. So there seems to be like an open channel for like if we did want to pitch stuff to them in the future. Whether or not that would lead anywhere is up in the air for everything. So I don't know.
That makes sense. So for anyone who's not familiar with like the agenting process, like do you this just sorry, really quick. This question is directed at chat. Do you want to hear more about the agenting process, or do you want to keep talking about like we will keep talking about like the book and Ashleigh and her writing process, but do are we interested in hearing about the agents? Sure, I'd like to hear more. Absolutely. Well, all right. So then I guess I will give a quick overview of how the agenting process works, and then I'd love to hear kind of your experience with it, if you are willing to share, Ashleigh. I know a lot of people like struggle, like me, with the agenting process. So the way that it works within the publishing world is usually there's a go-between between the writer and the publishing houses, who is the agent. So a writer most of the time cannot just directly sell a book to publishing houses. They have to have an agent who represents them. And that agent then sells or attempts to sell the book to publishing houses, more specifically to editors at each of the publishing houses. And if the editor is interested, they might pick it up, take it to their team, and be like, hey, let's buy this. But before you can get to that stage, you have to do what's called querying an agent. So querying an agent basically involves trying to convince an agent to represent you as an author long term. So it's not just for one book, it's for like all of your writing career. And you can always part ways with the agent later if like things happen, but usually the understanding is they're going to be representing you throughout your writing career, not just for one book. So querying involves writing usually like a one-page letter in which you describe the book, your experience in writing, why you're querying that agent specifically, and then you'll include, it varies from agent to agent. Some of them want like the first chapter, some want the first 5 pages, some want the first like 30 pages. So then you'll send them the beginning of your book. If they're interested, they will ask for more. If they're interested even more after that, they'll ask for a full manuscript. And then they'll read through it and tell you, like, hey, I would love to talk more. I'm interested in representing you. Or they'll say, I'm sorry, I don't think this is the best fit for me. It is incredibly difficult to get an agent, especially these days. The publishing market is a little all over the place. Um, from my perspective, it seems like no one really knows what's going to sell, and so it feels like no one super knows what they want. So it can feel very wishy-washy at times, the market. So that is the background, and that is what querying an agent involves. So how has that been for you, Ashleigh? What's kind of your experience been?
Yeah, so our first agent, we had a very unique experience because we had our book deal before we got an agent. And so we got our book deal. We were really excited about it. Then they sent us the contract, and it was like this might be a hyperbole, but it was like the 70-page long contract of lawyer speak that we were like, I don't know what any of this means. And, we really didn't want to get into this like blindly, just like sign something and not know what we're signing. So we like reached out to like anybody we knew connected to like publishing or like lawyers or anything, being like, hey, can you help us out with this contract and just like make sure we know what we're doing? And through those channels, we actually got in touch with um, this guy, and he I'm like debating whether or not I should drop names or not.
Oh.
But so anyway, through some like connections, this guy, he was an agent of somebody else, and he was like, hey, I'll take a look for look I'll take a look at it for you. And so he did, and he was like, hey, I'm interested. Can I like read your guys' book? And we were like, oh, sure. And he read it, and he's like, all right, would you guys be interested in having me as an agent? And it was kind of nice for him because we already had a contract, so he was like guaranteed to like get a cut. But we were like, yes, please. You need to help us with this contract and with like negotiating deals and things. So he became our agent, and he helped us through the whole rest of the publication process for the Immortal game, which was really great. And then we stayed on for a couple years, and he helped me work through some like manuscripts. But after a little while, he decided he wanted to step away from the publishing industry, focus more on his family. So we parted ways very amicably. It was great. But unfortunately, now that means I am back in the query trenches.
Oh, well, you're in good company. A lot of us are there. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's been a bigger trend with a lot of agents kind of deciding to like step back out of the publishing industry. So I'm sorry to hear that happened to you, but
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. So yeah, I'm querying right now. I have a couple books that I'm potentially shopping. I looked at the stats today. So if anybody's interested in the stats, I have sent out 63 queries so far. I have 27 rejections, but yesterday I got a full manuscript request.
oh, that's so
Yeah.
exciting! Congrats.
So maybe I'll be published again at some point in time.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it'll happen. You're a very talented writer and you're very hardworking, so I believe it'll happen. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Ah,
Patience. You need patience in this industry.
it's true. Most people say you need to send about 100 queries to agents before you get your acceptance, is a common statistic that I hear.
Yes, I feel like I've definitely heard that too.
Yeah. So we do have a question from someone in chat. With the advent of reading online through Kindle and other similar mediums, is it possible to just publish your book yourself and sell it through Amazon as a digital copy? So I feel like there are
Definitely.
a lot of answers to this, but what are your thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, the easiest answer is like, yes, self-publishing, major thing. Tons of people are like, it's like, I remember when, like, 10 years ago, I was like, there was like this stigma about self-publishing, how it
Yeah.
was like really risky. And like nowadays, it's like, okay, why are you even going to publishing houses when you can just self-publish? So it's like, in my opinion, it's like flipped on its head, and like everybody is self-publishing. Um,
Hmm.
and there's like definitely lots of things that you need to be careful about, and make sure you're doing it the right way. Um, but yeah, I am definitely open to trying self-publishing if I'm like trying and trying to get an agent and it's not working. And at some point, I might just be like, okay, well, whatever. I'm gonna put it on Amazon or whatever and just see if anybody likes it.
Yeah, I feel like there are so many difficulties with self-publishing because not only do you have to do all of the upfront costs with hiring an editor, a book designer, an interior page layout person, there's also marketing and trying to get people to know that your book exists and trying to figure out, okay, what is the best use of my money to put into marketing? Like, what channels do I want to try advertising to? Like, what is the most effective way I can kind of get people interested in my book?
Yeah,
So
I would
it's,
definitely prefer to be agented and go through traditional publishing means, personally, because yeah, you don't have to worry about all of that stuff. But there are pros and cons.
yeah, it's just a lot to consider. Like you said, there are pros and cons to publishing and self-publishing, and it's just something you kind of have to consider before you go into it. Like, what do I want to focus on, and do I have the means to do uh either of these? Like, the means for self-publishing might be money, the means for traditional publishing might be your mental health.
That's
It
great.
it is it is a lot. Like we were talking about how like you there's a common statistic like you have to query 100 agents before you get an agent who is excited about your work and willing to represent you. That means you have 99 rejections that you kind of have to like kind of toughen yourself to and like not be afraid of being rejected and just know that like, oh, okay, that's fine. It wasn't for them. We'll try the next person. But it can add up to be a lot. So just things to consider.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So let's go back to the Immortal game really quick. Well, not really quick. Let's go back to the Immortal game. So when I was reading the book jacket, like it mentioned a lot of. I'm trying not to like get into anything that someone who hasn't read the book jacket like some sorry, let me rephrase this. I don't want to get into like spoiler territory for anyone who has not read the book. So from reading the book jacket, the summary mentions like 4 or 5 different characters and how they all kind of come together to help the main character on her quest. So I as soon as I see that there's like lots of characters and there's a squad dynamic going on, I'm always curious. Out of all the characters, who's your favorite and for why?
Yes, this one's easy. So we have our main character. The story kind of revolves around her, but we have 4 point of view characters. Um, and one of those is Kostas, and he is the son of Hermes. And he is a young god, and his domain is over um, games and emotions. So he is this very kind of like strategic person when it comes to like pretty much everything. He's very strategic about like how he communicates and like what feelings he gives off, and you know um how to act in real life. And he's like playing his whole life is like set up like a little chess game kind of, is kind of how we're doing it anyway. But he's um he's like a mastermind who's, he's kind of like the stoic one, that kind of stereotype. He's the stoic mastermind. And he's an archer, so gotta love the archer guy.
Always, always. Oh, those kinds of characters always just sound so fun to write.
Yeah, it's very intimidating to write because it's like I am not a mastermind. How am I gonna write one? But I think we did okay.
Well, that brings up a good question. Like, how do you so say that like you want to write a mastermind character, but you don't feel that you're a mastermind, or you want to write like a character who's really funny, but you are maybe not the best at like jokes or puns. Like, how do you kind of handle writing these characters who have personalities that are very different from your own?
That is a good question that I'm sure we are all spending our lives practicing. For me, I think it just takes like extra planning. Like you have some characters that just like flow and they just feel so like natural and they're just like coming out of like this part of you that is like, it's like part of you. And then there are those characters you're like, okay, this person needs to be more like this. And I kind of like to think that like I've got a bunch of different people, kind of like inside out, like a bunch of different people in my brain who like have different personalities. So like I might have to like channel a different personality, a different part of myself to be more like that person. And then also just like a lot of planning. Like, okay, I'm gonna sit here and think for 10 minutes about how this person is gonna respond in this piece of dialogue that is really not that significant, but it's gotta be right on. So
Yeah, I feel like sometimes like it's so like you want to get it just right and so like perfect, and sometimes it can come down to even on the sentence level, like you said, like it wasn't even a sentence that was that important, but you want it to feel just right and like it's something that that character would say or think or do. Oh, I love those
yeah.
little details.
Yeah, and the little details are sometimes the hardest because it's the details that'll catch you. Like you said, like one thing that comes across wrong, somebody might be like, "That's weird. I don't feel like the character would say it like that."
Yeah, I feel like there are two different quotes. God is in the details and the devil is the details. And I feel like both are right.
Yeah,
The details are where it shines, but they're also the hardest to nail down. So,
yeah.
what does your typical process look like? Kind of from the very beginning, like when you're just thinking of a book idea, all the way to publication. Like, how does that kind of look for you? Like, we already kind of talked about the publication part, but the writing process itself.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like in my opinion, the idea is one of the hardest parts. It's just like coming up with something because you might be like really inspired and something might come to you and you might be like, oh my gosh, I want to write a story about this and the character is going to be like this and it's going to be really fun. And then sometimes you're like between projects and you're like, I need to write something and I have no ideas. And you're like trying to force something to come. So, yeah, for like the idea process, I just like Pinterest, music, movies, and TV shows, trying to spark things. And I have like a notes app on my phone where I just like write down random ideas that come to me that hopefully one day might inspire something. Um, so yeah, that's where it all starts. You gotta get your idea, figure
Mhm.
out something that is interesting. Um, and then you got to flesh it out. You got to come up with your main character. You got to come up with your world and the details. You got to come up with your antagonist or whatever conflict is happening. And that can be really fun. Can be very time consuming. But I think that's one of my favorite parts. Is just kind of like coming up with the foundation work
Mhm.
of creating characters and worlds and magic systems and all of that stuff. It's really fun. Um, what I don't love is plotting, which
Oh,
is
I feel that.
probably one of the most important parts of the writing process. I don't like it. It's hard. Uh, so, Yeah, you guys maybe have heard that there's kind of like two types of plotters. There's like the pantsers and outliners, and then there's like, a spectrum in between. I consider myself somewhere in the middle. Like, I like to plot the generic outline, like 3 act structure. This is kind of how it's going to go. And then kind of just write whatever comes to me to connect the dots. Um, but it kind of changes per book too. Like, sometimes I'm really like, I outline chapter by chapter exactly what's going to happen. And then sometimes I just pants the whole book. And I don't know. I think it just kind of comes to you, whatever works. Um, find your own process and everything. And then I write my first draft and I try really hard to just like force it out and not get too caught up and just like, first draft is just like barf it up onto the page. Like, get the words out there. And then I generally make a plan for what I want to fix and what needs to be done a little bit better. And I will outline my second draft pretty thoroughly so I know exactly what I need to change in each chapter, get rid of any inconsistencies. And then I'll usually read it through at least one more time to like make sure, it's the best quality of writing that I can just give without any edits from anybody else. And then that's usually where I try to leave it, for either beta readers or hopefully an editor one day or something. But yeah, that's my whole process.
So you mentioned that sometimes the process is different for like the project. For the project you're working on now, what what has kind of been your approach? And do you want to talk about your current project in detail, or do you want to kind of
Sure.
keep that under wraps?
No, I'm happy to. But it's kind of interesting because it's like, okay, I kind of have like a couple.
Talk about them all. We want to know. We want to know.
Okay. um, so the one that I've been querying, um, it is complete, and I just like read through and finished a third draft for the full manuscript request. That one was my pants book. So I'd like come up with the characters and the the magic system, and I'd actually tried to outline it and write it a few different times over like several years. And finally last year I was just like, I'm just gonna pants it. I've got my main character, I've got the magic system, that's all I need. And it just worked. It was like magic. It was like, oh, hey, this is nice. Um, and then I drafted it, editing it, and so that one was very kind of spur of the moment, I guess, as I was writing, and it worked really well. Um, but I'm working on a different project, a little bit more, newer, and that one I outlined pretty thoroughly because, speaking of self-publishing earlier, I
Mhm.
am hoping to try it out on Kindle Vella, which is like Kindle Unlimited, but instead of getting the whole book at once, it's released serially. So like an episode at a time, kind of. And so I was planning on just like writing and releasing as I went, and so I wanted it to be really nicely outlined so that I didn't mess anything up. There were any inconsistencies. But life kind of happened, so I ended up getting through the whole first draft, and I was like, okay, well, I've drafted it once, I may as well edit it again, and then at some point when life is available, I'll start publishing. So I'm hoping
Aw.
this summer to maybe start publishing.
Well, if you do, let us know. Send me the link, and I will be sure to drop it in our channel Discord so that everyone can check it out.
Oh, thank you, I will.
Yeah. So I realize I should have asked what the like writing process was like for the Immortal game in terms
Oh,
of like how much was it planned and how much was it pantsed? Like I know that you guys
yeah.
mentioned it was like back and forth in a notebook, but I wondered like especially once it was picked up for publication, like did your process change? Like did you have to start planning a lot more as you were working with an editor? Like how did it go?
That is an awesome question. Um, so it's like honestly a little hard to remember because we started writing it like back in 2007 or something.
Oh, wow.
um, but yeah, so we were writing it in a notebook and we were just passing it back and forth. And I'm pretty sure we didn't really have a plan for where it was going to go. I think we were just like, okay, here are our characters and their powers, and this is the bad guy, and this is the goal. And we just kind of wrote. So I think the first draft was definitely a pants. And it actually took us math in my head like 6 years to actually finish one draft because we were like going through high school and passing a notebook back and forth, like writing whenever we had time. Um, and then I think after we were done, we were like, hey, we should try and get this published. So I think at that point we made a plan for like, okay, let's make sure everything is like clear and the plot makes sense and is coherent. And so we wrote another draft, a lot more planned out. And I think from then everything's been pretty um, intentional for all of the edits we made. And when we got an editor, I don't know if this is, I imagine this is like the same kind of process for everybody who gets an editor. But we got, the editor read it, and then she got back to us with a bunch of like suggested edits and thoughts and things. And we went back and forth to try and like, you know, be like, okay, we didn't like that idea. Can we work and change with this idea? Or like, we love this idea. This is perfect. And we, I think our editor kind of gave us, you know, room to do it how we wanted, as long as, you know, so we basically agreed on the edits that we were going to make. And then Talia and I decided what we were going to do. We planned it out. And then with a co-author, we kind of like divvied it up and said, okay, you take those edits, I'll take these edits. And then checked each other's changes and then sent it back. And then they sent us another letter that was like, okay, that's great. Now let's work on fine-tuning scenes and chapters. So yeah, especially working with a co-author, we had to make sure we were on the same page and we agreed to everything and we knew what the other person was doing. So it was very outlined and structured for that.
It sounds like it would have to be. Oh, so I know before I got into like the publishing industry, my concept of how writing worked was you wrote a book and then it was all done. That was it. It was perfect as is. I think a lot of people don't aren't as like familiar with like what is it like working with an editor? What does the process look like? And how many like rounds of edits did you have to go through with the editor?
Yeah, so we did 3 rounds, which I think sounded average-ish. But depending on the book and the author, it could be more. I think rarely it would be less, because that was kind of, we had, the first round was like, okay, these are your plot, character arc issues that we need to fix. And they were like things that would impact pretty much every chapter of the book. Sometimes we had to like delete whole chapters and rewrite whole sections. Sometimes we had to change. We made some pretty big changes. Now I like can't remember exactly what some of them were. One of them is, I don't want to spoil anything. One of them was like a big character difference, like for their plot line that like Talia was not happy with. We did like not want to really do it, but our editor was like, hey, look, here are the reasons why I think this should happen. And of course, it's her profession. She knows what she's doing. We were like, yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, there were definitely some things where we had to like back and forth a little bit and say, okay, you saw this issue with our book. We need to fix it. We don't like your suggestion. Can we come up with a different way to fix it? Some of them we found a different way to fix it. Some of them we had to just accept and go with it. Yeah.
Oh, that's always hard. I know. Yeah, I know how difficult that process can be, and how you have to like pick your battles with your editor, and kind of you can't keep everything, so you have to kind of choose like what do I want to fight for to keep in my book.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. But I definitely think, it was very clear that like our book was definitely getting better. Like all of this stuff that we had, well, that we did, made it better in every way. So it was good. It was all good. Sometimes a little sad, but it was good.
Yeah. It really does come down to, oh, the editor really does know what they're doing. They do have a lot of experience in this. Even the changes you don't want to make, oftentimes what I hear from other writers is they were very resistant at first. They didn't like it, but after some time had passed, they were like, yeah, that was the right choice. So we do have some more questions in chat. So, when you're writing, do you try to avoid or lean into certain tropes, whether it is a preference or different elements of them, or if avoiding them, is it because you dislike them or think the market is overfull with them?
A great question. There are definitely some tropes that I personally hate and would never use in my book because I think they're ridiculous. Um, like I know lots of people have issues with this one, but for example, like with your romance arc, like the miscommunication trope,
Oh,
I hate that so much.
it's so annoying. Just talk.
Exactly. So there are certain ones that I'm like, no, I wouldn't do that. But a lot of times for me, like having a trope in my mind helps me plot. So like, okay, I'm gonna do enemies to lovers for my subplot in this story. Like, and then I kind of like look for examples of enemies to lovers tropes and outlines, and it kind of helps me to like come up with structure and outline. So there are definitely times where I lead into the tropes because they help me, right? And then I think sometimes they just happen or don't happen, and it's just kind of like, oh, that worked, or that didn't really work. I should change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like they're tropes for a reason. Sometimes you just can't avoid them because everything in existence has already been done.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we do have another question in chat. So when you're writing, do you try to write a book that you yourself would enjoy to read, or do you focus more on a book that you think the masses would be interested in?
That is an awesome question. And personally, my opinion, actually, not just my opinion, I heard this from my agent and lots of professionals in the industry, is like, don't try to write for the market because the market is always changing. So their best advice is to like write what you are passionate about, what you are into, and what you're enjoying, because that's going to come across on the page and that's going to make your book better. And if it's not right for the market right now, you might have to just like set it on the back burner, put it on the shelf for a little bit, and then bring it back out later. But I mean, again, you never know. The market is so up and down. Just just write what you want. Just write what you love, what you're into, and the time will come for it someday.
Yeah, trends are always in waves. I mean, look at vampires. That was all the thing. Then no one wanted to see it, and now it's all the thing again. So I
Yeah.
mean, if you just wait, it'll the time you like you said, the time will come. And it also just takes so long to like go through the writing process itself, and then also the publication process, that trying to write to the market often isn't a great idea anyway, just because by the time you actually finish and publish the book, that trend is probably going to be over.
Yeah. I definitely feel like unless you're writing a genre that's literally always got a like hardcore audience like period romances. No one's ever gonna get sick of period romances, right? So like unless you're in a genre like that, yeah, you don't know what's gonna be popular today and like not be popular tomorrow. And like you were saying, it takes so long. I was shocked. I was shocked when we got our book contract for the Immortal game and they told us it was going to be 2 years before it was published. I was
Yep.
like, 2 years? Are you kidding me? That's forever. But then after the whole process, I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think 1 year is like less common. I think 1 to 2 years is typically how long I hear. My contract was also 2 years, if that gives anyone a sense of it's a common thing. There's just a lot that goes into it, especially on the publishing end. So yeah, not necessarily wise to write to market. Um, all right. I guess we should get near to wrapping up. Oh, we have a question. What exactly takes up all that time for the 2 years to actually finish the publishing process?
Great question. Okay, so let's see. Sorry, I'm getting distracted with my dog in the background.
Doggo!
He's getting into some stuff. Okay. um, so yeah, so basically we got the like email that was like, hey, we'd love to talk about purchasing your book and publishing it in like February, March. And then it took like 3-ish months, 3 to 4 months to get the contract signed. So like from the offer to the signing of the contract was like 3 to 4 months, like back and forth, figuring things out. And then we got our edit letter back, the first one. And it was like, here are all of the changes that we had to discuss the changes. And then we had to make the changes. And they gave us 3 months to make the changes. Then they gave us another one. They gave us another 3 months. So it basically took us like 9-ish months just to get all the editing done. And then they take it away and they have to do formatting and come up with a title and a cover. And then even if it's done, they have, I mean, a publishing house has so many books on their roster for like coming out. So they want to stagger releases. So then they basically were just like, okay, your book is scheduled to be released this time. And that's just like what they have in their schedule available for books. And up until then, there was like quite a few months of just waiting. But you know, they were like planning marketing things and like doing like virtual book tours and interviews and things for our launch. So yeah. Plus also we got published during COVID. Like COVID hit right in the middle of our book publishing, so I'm sure that did not help.
Yeah, someone
things.
actually asked in chat, did COVID interfere with that 2-year contract?
I think it might have like pushed it back. Now that I think of it, I think maybe our deadline got pushed back 6 months. I think it was supposed to come out in the fall and it came out in like May. So I think it did a little bit, definitely crazy, but a lot of the publishing stuff they could kind of like work on at home, you know. So it wasn't like too bad, but definitely a little crazy.
Yeah. COVID did a number on a lot of things, sadly.
Yeah.
Someone else asked, do you have any ideas you come up with but can't use, so you stash them for later?
Yes. I have a really long notes folder on my phone with just like character ideas or magic ideas, things like that. And I have a bunch of like sort of set up books that I'm like, one day I'll write that, but I'm either, you know, working on something else or not feeling super into it. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll get around to it one day, but if not, I don't know, whatever.
It's hard when you have so many ideas and you have to prioritize.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna say we should probably start wrapping it up. I have two final questions for you. So,
Okay.
do you have any advice for aspiring writers or anyone who wants to get into publishing?
Yes, I think my best advice is just the best, like kind of the advice you get from anyone, anywhere in the publishing industry. It's just like, don't give up. Just keep writing. Just keep doing it and do it for fun. Do it because you love it. Try not to like pin all of your hopes and dreams on getting published within a certain time frame because it's probably not going to happen. Um, like I remember me and my friend being like, "We're gonna get published at 18, and it's gonna be crazy awesome." Yeah, I was like 26, and that is like, I feel like that's young for most people.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just keep writing, write for fun, write what you love, and like you know, keep in mind that it's gonna be a long process to getting published, and it might be a long road, but as long as you're having fun on the way, it'll be great.
Yeah. All right. So, for the final question, I wanted to ask if there's anything you're working on or anything upcoming that you wanted to promote and talk about before we sign off.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of put in a plug for hopefully in a few months when my book comes out, hopefully on Kindle Vella, the self-published one. For any of you interested in sci-fi, it's a science fantasy, kind of like a squad book, and it's about like dimension jumping. There are like aliens, and dinosaurs, and fairies, and I kind of just like wanted to write a book with all of my favorite genres in it. And I made it happen. So it's going to be called Spectrum Earth, and hopefully it comes out on Kindle in the next few months.
Oh, that sounds so fun. I know we definitely have a lot of sci-fi and fantasy fans in our community. So, like I said, send that link when it is ready. I'll absolutely share it. It sounds so fun. And I remember reading an early outline and it sounded so cool. So,
Good.
so all of you should check it out.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time today and answering all of our questions.
of course. Thank you for setting this up.
Yeah, I hope you had a good time.
I loved it. Come back anytime.
Likewise, you're always welcome here.
Thank you.
Oh, oh, someone in chat said I need to finish the Immortal game first, but I'll check it out for your vellum book.
Yes. Do that.
Good. Oh,
Thanks, guys.
I'm so glad. This was so fun. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. And thanks for everybody in the chat for coming and participating and being cool.
Yeah. They can be polite when they want to be. No, but thank you all so much, and thank you guys in chat for coming, and thank you, Ashleigh, for, like I said, giving us our time and sharing your experience with us.
Of course, anytime. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Have a great evening.
you too, and have a great weekend.
Yes, the whole day.
Yes, nice long weekend. All right.